I've said repeatedly that I don't think we're going to vote or reform our way out of the problems that we're facing. I think we are going to collapse our way out of them. I think it's only when the system starts to break down, primarily for economic reasons, causing the welfare state to break down, which in turn I think will cause faith in the state itself to break down. I think it's only then that we will start to take seriously the issues that we face in modern liberal left-wing society, particularly the what I see as the existential problem of invasion. I think we will only address those problems then. Until that happens, I think we are going to continue to conform and to comply. And what I want to talk about here is that the level of social docility, which I think is as high as ever. And I want to illustrate it by showing that, if anything, that level of compliance is increasing as things get a bit more anxious. And I want to look at two things in particular, and that is what happens in the safety of the voting booth and what happens in the safety of the jury room. My point being that the safer it is, the more conformist we become. When we draw the curtain, when we close that door behind us, and the law kicks in saying that no one can inquire, no one can give us any trouble for what we say or for what we do in those areas, something obedient in us kicks in. I think this is related to welfare and statist economics, state management of the economy, that we have been persuaded is what keeps us employed, and particularly the welfare state. Now, I think this doesn't reflect well on us. It's simply something that we have to face. It's our wish to get something not very good, not very impressive, not very high quality, not very efficient, but something for nothing, because the maths, the ratios of tax and spend basically mean that for 9 out of 10 of the British population, you get more out of the tax and spend system than you put in. So it is an economic, it's a rational consideration for most people, 9 out of 10 people, to vote for more tax and spend. And I think we've become addicted to that. The way I've described it is like a nose tube where we're snorting welfare up the nose tube, except that nose tube doesn't go into our stomach, it goes into our brains. And we become addicted to it. And I think that's only going to continue. But what I want to look a little bit into the future and to look at how that might change. But first of all, I want to describe it by looking at the jury system and the voting system, and two particular one jury decision and the recent by-election in Rochdale. Now, the reason I want to look at the jury system is because you couldn't have a safer environment if people's opposition to what is happening, what is being done to us, if that existed, then the safe environment of the jury room is where you would expect it to come out, because in Britain there is a law that says you are not allowed to inquire. No one's allowed to inquire as to what happened in that jury room. It is sacrosanct, it is safe. You can come to any perverse conclusion you like. You're not going to get in trouble. You're not going to get held in contempt of court. The media can't give the jury a hard time for it. So you could not think of a safer environment, and yet juries are peculiarly compliant to the mainstream narrative. I was very surprised by the verdicts in the Derek Chauvin case, the death of Floyd, and also the Ahmaud Arbery case where he died, and Michael's father and son got sent to prison for life. I think for prison for life plus 30 years, and the other one got to prison for life plus 7 years, something like that. I think there were miscarriages of justice. I don't know how the juries came to those unanimous conclusions. That's the disturbing thing. Those conclusions were unanimous. And I think we have our own version of that in the Sam Melia case, which was a unanimous verdict arrived at with less than 1 day's consideration. Now, I want to look first of all at the Sam Melia case, so if you bear with me. Now, you may know that Sam Melia, he was charged with distributing or publishing material with the intention of stirring up racial hatred, and also with racially aggravated criminal damage. Now, the more important one of those two, I think the charge that featured the most, the trial, from what I've read, is the first one, publishing material with the intention of stirring up racial hatred, and that is this legislation here, Public Order Act, Section 19. Let me zoom in a bit if I can. Hold on. There we are. There now. Anyone who publishes or distributes written material which is threatening, abusive, or insulting is guilty of an offence if he intends thereby to stir up racial hatred, or having regard to all the circumstances racial hatred is likely to be stirred up thereby. So what you have, this is bad legislation. When Enoch Powell said that people shouldn't be criminalised for such intentions, I think about 50 years ago, he was right, because what you're effectively doing is punishing someone for their intentions, not for what they publish, simply for the fact they publish something, anything. If their intention, i.e. their thoughts, relate in a certain way to what other people might feel, i.e. the hatred they will feel. So you're being punished for your thoughts about somebody else's feelings. And that's, I think that is thought crime. I would go so far as to say I think that's double thought crime. That's getting thought crime about somebody else's thought crime. Now, my point is, I think this was a highly politicised prosecution and trial. He shouldn't have been convicted. I think that, whatever you think of it, and I think that this jury should be thoroughly ashamed of the verdict that they reached. I want to, if I go on to the next tab, if I give you a little bit of an example of how absurd it was. This is the Crown Prosecution Service. That's their webpage about it. And the bit I want to look at is Nick Price, head of the CPS Special Crime and Counter-Terrorism Division. Okay, this was not terrorism. This was publishing stickers and making them available for other people to print and then for other people to stick on lampposts and places like that if they wanted to. And so you don't, and incidentally at the trial, what was said is that every one of the things that were said that were published on those stickers were in themselves legal, they were lawful. So none of what was said or encouraged to be said on those stickers was illegal, according to the trial. That's what I've read. Anyway, so this head honcho of the Counter-Terrorism Division says Mealy was perfectly aware that the stickers he published on his Telegram channel were being downloaded and then stuck in public places around the country. He also knew full well the impact these racially inflammatory stickers were having, and by attempting to remain anonymous, sought to protect himself and others through investigation. He was very deliberate in the manner he wanted to spread the message of racial hatred and online messages recovered made. He clearly knew that these stickers were being displayed in public and causing damage to public property. Well, that's the damage to public property is having a sticker stuck on a lamppost. I'm uncertain as to why that could be encouraging criminal damage. For there to be criminal damage, it's not just that you do something to a thing. It has to be you do some kind of damage that can't be put right with reasonable efforts. And peeling off a sticker, I guess it would depend on the type of sticker, the type of glue, etc. Peeling off a sticker, I would have thought that's reasonable effort. So I wouldn't have thought that that's query whether that really is criminal damage. I think he had very good. Sam Mealy had good representation, a good barrister at appeal. So I'm not trying to rubbish him, but query if that was criminal damage. But that is not what stickers is not the level of criminal damage that should involve the counter-terrorism unit. It was because of what he said, or what those stickers said, the politics. That's why they were dragged in. And what did those stickers say? I hear you cry, as with one voice. Examples, this is from Leeds Live, I won't go to the top of the article. Examples of the most extreme stickers identified by police included second generation, third, fourth, you have to go back. Mass immigrant, so that's calling for repatriation. That is a perfectly tenable political point of view. I agree with that political point of view, and many people do. And you can advocate that. Mass immigration is white genocide. Again, nothing that's extreme, apparently. They seek conquest, not asylum. and there is a war on whites. And I think, I suspect the one I've read, I suspect the one that he was really convicted and sentenced for was the one where he said it was considered anti-Semitic, and that is little hats, big problem. So that's not reported on here, but I suspect that may have been why. Also, the fact that in his garage he was reported to have a picture of Hitler, but that is in your garage. I wouldn't do that. I don't agree with that. And also, I've got to say, it sort of bothers me a bit that someone does, because I just think Hitler was such an evil, wicked man, and the whole regime was so evil. But you can put up what you want in your garage. It is your own private space. That is not something you prosecute for. That is certainly not something that you sentence for. It's certainly not something that you imprison people for. But I think the politics was something that I think they concerned the judge. Now this is a report from the Yorkshire Evening Post. Sam Mealy leads Pudsey white supremacists with Nazi tendencies. They're really laying it on thick here. Jailed after sticker campaign. Also, but by me saying I don't agree with this or that, I hope that's not me going through the tedious, cowardly disavowal that the free speech organisations have gone through in order to try and avoid standing up for this man, as they should have done from day one. And it's shameful that they haven't. But if we look at what the judge said, you clearly demonstrate a deep-seated antipathy to these groups, and you do so by your uninhibited use of language that no right-thinking person would consider appropriate. So he's basically saying your opinions are not the opinions of right-thinking people. So that there's a line, and if you're the other side of the right-thinking line, you can and should. I'm going to imprison you, is what he's saying. And he went on there. He said the fact you have Nazi sympathies couldn't be clearer. Now, the reason I'm dealing with Nazi sympathies, I want to show the worst of the case so that it can't be said that I'm trying to gel it over. Okay. In your garage, you had on display a poster of Hitler sporting the legend Ein Volk, Ein Reich, Ein Führer, and a Nazi eagle, a symbol developed originally by the Nazi Party in Germany in the 1920s, which became the symbol of the German government after the Nazis took power. You even posted a picture of Hitler to a Telegram account describing him as our uncle. Now, none of that is something that the courts should get involved in any way. You can have a picture of whoever you like in your garage, and if you're on a private Telegram account, you can post pictures of who you like. God knows there's worse than that all over social media at the moment. So you were engaged in a campaign of hatred against minority communities. You were, I'm sure, quite deliberately trying to stir up racial hatred. Okay, so it goes on. None of that is something that people should get in prison for. So what I hope I'm making clear there is that what he was convicted for, the reason he was convicted and sentenced and jailed, is because of his views, because of his intention to stir up racial hatred, his intention about other people's feelings. That, I think, fits the definition of thought crime. And so the question is, why did the jury convict? I don't think the jury should have convicted. I think they should have held the line on that and said, no, this person is entitled. There is a problem here today. Just stick your head out of your window. You can see that there's a problem with mass immigration. You can see that this is an issue. People are entitled to talk about it and to discuss it publicly, uninhibitedly. It will serve no function trying to repress it. It's idiotic. But and the jury should have... I think they should have acquitted unanimously, but they convicted unanimously after less than a day's jury trial. A consideration in the jury room. Now, this I think is an issue. The reason I think this is an issue is because juries are almost encouraged to come to jury verdicts to say on occasion, all the evidence shows this person is guilty, but we don't think the crime they're accused of is a crime they should be punished for. We're going to acquit. It's the technical name is jury nullification or jury verdicts, and it goes back a long way. And if you bear with me, I want to bring up a case about it. Now, this case here is considered to be the main historic case about it from 1670, called Bushell's case, but it goes back earlier than that into the 1600s. I think 1550s with a fellow called Throckmorton. He was acquitted on a jury verdict. Then in the 1640s, John Lilburne was twice acquitted for publishing, and the jury were instructed they had to convict him, and they said no, we think he should be allowed to publish. And then about 30 years later, this case, Bushell's case, where William Penn, who later went over to America, Pennsylvania, and he was a Quaker who preached, wasn't allowed to preach, he was put on trial for it, and the judge said to the jury, you have to convict, and they refused to convict, and they were locked in the jury room without food or drink, or I think even a toilet, for 2 nights. Don't know how they survived, and they refused to convict. And eventually there was a writ of habeas corpus, and they were released, and a higher judge said they can't be held in contempt for failing to deliver the verdict that the judge wants them to deliver. And you can look through, if you look through that case, I mean, I'm not going to read it now, but you can go on Wikipedia and read about it. What I'll point out here is that plaque is a plaque which was put up in the Old Bailey, and it praises the jury's courage and endurance in delivering their jury verdict, that instance of jury nullification. And the reason I think the jury should have done so in this case is because it was a political prosecution. I think that was made clear by the prosecutor. That's a cut and paste from a report of what the prosecutor said, where he said, as a country, we pride ourselves on being a tolerant and multicultural nation. However, there are some people who do not share such views and who are firmly opposed to ideas such as multiculturalism. This is the prosecutor outlining the prosecution case. Okay. Some people may be described as being overtly racist or extremely right-wing in their attitude or in the opinions they express. So I think that I think a good jury should have said, get stuffed. We're not, you're not going to get your hands on, we're not going to help you get your hands on someone just for that. But they didn't, and that is not impressive. I think that is an example of social docility. Had they done so, had that jury said, we're going to acquit, we don't care what tendentious political argument you ram at us, we're going to acquit, they would have been thanked for their service, and they would have been on their way home, no repercussions for them. I think that is an example of the social docility, the levels of social docility in society at the moment. I think juries are going along with the official narrative. I think that is us. And those juries, that's not just those 12 people, they come from us. So it is this is a drill down into our own attitudes. I think when we sense that things are entering the real world, we suddenly become compliant. Well, that is depressing, but it's better to realise it. I think this is also reflected in the free speech organisations, which I think, as far as I'm aware, pretty much down to a man, have not taken up Sam Melia's case. I think several of them have gone, either have gone out of their way to say, well, his case doesn't really amount to a free speech issue that we need to be concerned with, or if he's in prison, it's nothing to do with us, or else that they've gone so far, they've just fallen on their faces to disavow what he's saying, that anything they say about the prosecution or the legislation is highly academic. And that again, I think that is, they regard themselves as being part of the real world. And I think they just they get infected by this sense of docility. As an aside, I think we should bear Sam Melia in mind whilst he's in jail. And I'm not aware that his wife, Laura, has made any request for funding. I know someone has put up I think it's a give, send, go appeal for money for them. I think the minimum is £4. I suspect there might be something to do with give, send, go, that they just don't allow donations smaller than that. If it was possible to give £1, I'd say just give £1, because it's not simply the total volume of donations, but the number of donations as well, as a way of wishing people well. The fact that neither he nor Laura Towler, so far as I'm aware, have asked anyone for money, suggests that if they receive money, they will put it to good use. So it won't be like banging the donate button for Tommy Robinson, who will then come online bragging about how he scored coke in every country he's been to, or some such rubbish. You're welcome to give money to him if you're foolish enough to do so, but well, that's up to you. But I think if you give money to Laura Towler or to Sam Melia, I think it will be put to good use, and I think that it is appropriate, given that they are. I think he is. Whatever you say about his speech, I think he's a free speech criminal, and that shouldn't happen. Okay, so that's juries. When we, the public, go into the jury room, suddenly the conformist side of our brain clicks in. And I think the same thing happens with voting. I think this, when we go to vote, we go into the privacy of the voting booth, suddenly we think, oh, this is real world, and we become compliant. What I want to do is to look at the Rochdale by-election result to analyse that. It's not as hopeful as it might seem. But before I do that, I want to look at our attitudes more generally to try and explain the backdrop to this. Oh, by the way, that's the page that anyone can use to give money, to donate money to Sam Melia or Laura Towler, his wife, and their baby, and the new baby that's to come, if you want to, on Give, Send, Go. Okay, voting and compliance. Now, this is this graph here from YouGov. This is a poll on, I think this is a running poll that YouGov do, the most important issues facing the country. If you look at that, I've just highlighted the three top issues. There's about, I'd say about a dozen there that you can look at. Health, immigration and asylum, and the economy. And that orange one there, that's the economy. That's top of our list. That's what we're concerned about. We're concerned about survival. Survival means money. The economy, now this is, we think that the economy is managed by politicians. It isn't. Politicians screw up the economy. They do nothing to improve the state of the economy. The best thing that a politician can do if he wants to improve the economy is to commit Harry-Kerry. Basically, he won't be taking his salary, and he won't be doing the harm that he does by going to work every day. The second best thing he can do is throw a sickie, because then he still won't be doing any harm. But that's the economy is our main issue. That's 51%. This is a poll where people are asked, what are the main issues, and please tick up to 3. So I assume most people will tick 3 issues. And so that's 51% of people chose that issue, the economy. So that's, I would say that might be 51 out of 300, and 49% of people, 45% of people referred to the health. That's the NHS. That's the welfare state, and then 36% of people chose immigration and asylum. So really. Immigration, the problem of invasion, which I think is an existential problem, that is fairly low down on the list. It is trumped every time by concerns about the economy, by concerns about welfare. So the welfare state and state management of the economy. Those are the things we're concerned about. And that means when it comes to it, when it comes to doing something in the real world concerns kick in, and those real world concerns are about money, about government, and we do not want to rock the boat. And we will go along with things in those circumstances. And you can see this best if you, and that renders us incredibly docile, because we feel, however much we grumble and complain about government, we feel we rely on them in the real world for our survival. We're like maladjusted prepubescents, dependent upon their parents, but occasionally tantruming and complaining at them and saying that we hate them, but going along with them because we feel we need them to survive. And I think this is borne out in the Rochdale by-election results. That's from 29th of February, so that's about a month and a half ago. If I do this, hold on, if I show the Rochdale results. Now that's the Rochdale, that's a BBC News story. Rochdale by-election landslide win for George Galloway. And what you had there was George Galloway. If you recall this, he got 39.7% of the votes. I would consider him something of an enemy. I'm sure he knows nothing about me, doesn't know I exist. But you've got to hand it to him. The scale of his victory was impressive, and the fire-breathing rhetoric that he has come out with since has been quite impressive. So you have to hand his credit to him for his success. And then second, David Tully, he was a local guy, a local businessman. He got 21.3%. And then Tories got 12 and Labour got 7.7. So Tories and Labour took a real thrashing. Effectively, they lost almost any votes. They got very few votes at all. Well, what I think happened is, what seems to have happened is George Galloway, he appealed to the Muslim vote. He got the Muslim vote and Muslim sympathisers within Rochdale. I think there are quite a few. There are quite a few English sympathisers with Palestine. And the thing I thought was funny here is Trevor Phillips, who I think is a really very docile teddy bear, and quite amusing because he's just a bit, I found him just a bit dim. And Trevor Phillips asks, how is it that a by-election in a northern town gets decided by what's happening in Gaza? I wonder what could be doing that. It's because the Muslims and Muslim sympathisers voted for George Galloway. So English people who are not Muslim sympathisers, I think they went for David Tully, and I think it's his platform that is the significant one. Well, what you can see is with Muslims, they go straight full bore for their communal interests, their interests as Muslims. That's what matters. They're not ashamed of it. They're going to push it. They're going to push it hard. But what do the English do? What do we do? Well, when you look at Dave Tully, you see that level of compliance, and it is depressing. If I go, now this is on his Twitter feed, and he did another page saying about me, and he goes on about being a local lad, educated, brought up and working in the area. I think, I don't know if this was his intention, but the effect was to appeal to English Rochdalians, non-Muslim Rochdalians, and to say, I'm an original Rochdalian, vote for me. I'm not saying that was his intention, but I think that was the effect. So Rochdale's own, a local lad for local voices. Well, what are people going to assume from that? So I think that message went to white, English, non-Muslim Rochdale people who are not Muslim sympathisers. And his platform here, I think it is the most pathetic, docile, I find it a nauseating platform, really pitiful. I'll just read it. Challenge and advocate for the reinstatement of our maternity ward. Okay, more money from central government. He's going to pester central government for more money, more welfare, that's what he wants. Zero tolerance against speeding motorists across our borough. Well, I've got no quarrel with that. That one seems okay to me. I don't know much about the speeding problem or what that means. Does it mean new laws, new structure? I don't know. But anyway, that one seems okay. The next one, the rest of it is all welfare. More money from government, please. Begging bowl, begging bowl, begging bowl. All right. Aid local businesses by advocating for subsidies for operational costs. Yeah, so subsidise local businesses, right, from central government. Yeah, that's going to fly. Help create central support and funding for all amateur sports clubs across our borough. So again, more welfare, more government money for sports clubs. Same old thing. That will keep young people out of trouble. That will solve the problems of multiculturalism by having a few more youth clubs. Where have we heard that before? Advocate for support and funding to secure the future of Rochdale AFC, the football team, and Rochdale Hornets. So more welfare, more money. Free money, please, from central government to support the local football team, because they can't support themselves, apparently. Maybe they're not good enough. They don't have enough supporters. All right. Highlight and fight for more support and funding for the running costs of Spring Hill Hospice and Moorland Children's Home. More welfare for the NHS. The NHS, I hate to break it to you, that is welfare. And that's what he wants, more welfare there. And then raise the challenges, financial hurdles and issues being faced daily by people unable to work due to taking care of their loved ones full time. Okay, bad use of the apostrophe, should know better, he wants to be an MP, anyway. But that is, again, more welfare money, more handouts for people who are looking after relatives. We want more state welfare. And then finally, help support and challenge our council to be more accountable and transparent. Meaning, I don't know what that means. I'm not aware that he said. That platform is pitiful. He's basically saying, whatever you've got a gripe about, I will go to central government and I will say, give us more money, please. That's all. And a more docile platform you could not imagine. And hold on, bear with me. And this is the result he got. He really did well. Came from nothing to 21.3%, nearly double the Tories who were next, and more than Tories and Labour put together is what he got. I think that is an example that illustrates that we, the English, are still very compliant, very conformist, very socially docile, because we are not challenging the problems that we are facing, and certainly not the worst of the problems. We're simply saying, let's vote harder for even more of the same, please. More handouts, more tax and spend, as if that's going to solve it. And I think this is borne out, not just in Rochdale, it's borne out in opinion polls generally. If you look at opinion polling for the next UK general election, I'll go down to the chart there, I'll click on that. So that's Labour on about 45, Tories on about 24, I'd say. And so we're sick of the Tories, so we're going to vote Labour instead. They'll probably be worse than the Tories. I don't think they'll be any better, but we are still we have the mainstream blinkers on. We do not want to challenge the problems that we're facing. Incidentally, Starmer and Labour, they have not said one thing. All they want is power. They have not said one thing about what they're going to do. If they had a reason to be in power, they would tell us they simply want power for its own sake. That is dangerous. They're not going to change the situation. I think they will probably make the cracks in the economy a lot worse, which is good for me. So in that sense, I would say vote Labour. But I hear you cry again, as with one voice, what about reform? Surely this shows that we're not putting up with it anymore. Up with this we will not put. And that turquoise line, that reform line, look at that, it's pointing up towards the ceiling. There's a glorious future ahead of us. Well, no, there isn't. What we're finding, this is The Guardian, there's a page from Hope Not Hate, which I could have shown you, where they gloat about how they have exposed two Reform candidates. Reform UK says it published candidates list early so the media could help vet it. And the media included Hope Not Hate, because Hope Not Hate has come out and supposedly exposed three candidates, which Reform very quickly cancelled, almost overnight. And leader Richard Tice says the process is like an MOT after 10 dropped so far for offensive online comments. So, well, that is how hard the Reform are going to challenge the situation. There you are, there's Hope Not Hate, more hateful Reform candidates exposed. So, and it talks about Hope Not Hate reveals two more extremist candidates from Reform UK in the latest string of embarrassments for the party. So when, what's his name, Tice says we published the candidates list early so the media could vet it, that's what I think he means. Well, that's one of the things that he means. That means that line there, that blue line there for Reform, that is not a sign that we are seriously challenging the problems that we face. It's a sign that we are looking for new ways, new personnel to deal with the problems in the same old way as before. We don't want to have to challenge the problems that we've made for ourselves. There's further evidence of this if you look at the Reform manifesto. Reform is essential. What they're saying is we're going to reduce taxes, we're going to have net zero immigration. Well, that's going to be over 500,000 a year coming in because people are increasingly getting out, perhaps understandably for some people. And then cheaper energy, subsidised energy bills, and suddenly waiting lists are going to be cut to zero. None of this adds up. You look. I've been through their economic plans in a previous video. I'll put a link to that one down below. It's not serious. Richard Tice is not serious. This is not a serious party, and it's just the same old conformist compliant nonsense that we're accustomed to. And I think the fact that their vote share is increasing is because we want more of that same compliance. We are still in that compliant mood. And it's not as if we're simply just getting turned off the whole system. Because if you look at turnout at elections, the last general election, this is the House of Commons Library, turnout at general elections, you see since 1918, the general curve is going down a little bit, but not by very much. Local elections is the same. The last local elections were in May 2023, and you see turnout at this is the Electoral Commission. Turnout at these elections was 32%, which is slightly lower than at the last comparable set of elections in 2019, when it was 32.5. So it's about steady at local elections. 30, it's not high, but it's not collapsing. So I don't think it's that we're turning our back on the system. I think we are simply wanting to go along with the system as it is at the moment. We are not in a mood to challenge it. Now, I've given reform a hard time there, I think deservedly so, but I have to say this for them. I don't think that's a problem with reform. I think that is reform responding rationally to the problem with us, the wider population. I think they know, they sense that if they get tarred with the racist brush, with the far right brush, the bulk of us, the population, will say, this sounds dangerous to me, this sounds like it might rock the boat. I don't want to entrust my dependence on welfare and state management of the economy and my job to a group of people who might be a bit radical or who rock the boat. That seems a bit dangerous. I want to stick with what I feel safe with because my financial survival is a priority for me, and that means the welfare state, which I am desperate to keep going under any circumstances. So I don't care what problems get inflicted. I am going to continue with the system as it is. I'll complain about it, I'll bitch and moan about it, but I will stick with it because I want that welfare to keep coming up my nose tube. I want to keep walking into my docile state-managed job because at least it enables me to survive, and then when I go home I can shut the door on all the risks and problems that are out there on the street, and maybe they'll affect someone else and not me. I think that's the way we are thinking. It's shameful, but I think that's the way we are thinking, and it's good to recognise that. Now, in case you think I'm trying to just depress you and say this is all terrible, no, I don't think that's the case at all. If you want to see where there is opposition, it is outside the other side of what people think of as the real world line. It is online on social media, where people express their sort of under the ice concerns and feelings and views which are the current, the flow of water under the ice. You can see that, you can feel that when you go onto social media. For if you look on Twitter in particular, I think is very good at that. For that, I think we are a big debt of thanks to Elon Musk for freeing it up. But it's still at the margins, at the periphery. It's not what people think of as being the real world. So people feel free to express it. They don't see it as being a threat to their financial survival. And it is occasionally, it will impinge upon the real world. You will get occasional victories. For instance, the Irish new hate crimes bill, that got defeated, I think largely because the widespread opposition was expressed on social media. I think you do get occasional victories. It does occasionally seep into what I think people think of as the real world. I think all of those concerns will burst in. I don't think it's futile. I think it matters because I think those concerns will burst into the real world once effectively, once the economy, particularly the welfare state, start to break down. When that happens, I think the situation and people's consciousness about them will get blown wide open. And then all these concerns that have been expressed under the ice, these will come to the surface, and they will, the fast-flowing river will get revealed at that time. Now, the timing for that I've set down, I would still stick to that. I think sometime around the end of this decade, maybe shortly after the end of this decade, like 2031, something like that, 2031, 32, somewhere around that time, I think that is when it really falls apart, and then the state falls over, the state authority falls over, and that is when I think a lot of these concerns get expressed, and we start to deal effectively in a way that has meaning with the problems that we face, particularly the problem of invasion. I think the sort of the kick-off for beginning to do that will be when the realization hits that this economy is not getting out of bed. It is terminally ill. It's not going to recover. It's going to die. And I think that realization, I said previously, I think that sometime around 2027, as usual, I might be a bit too early on that. I would say maybe 2028, sometime between now and 2030, I think the realization will hit. I think during Starmer's first term, if he gets elected, I think he will, I think they will screw up the economy in a big way. I don't think they know what they're doing. I think there'll be too many pressures on them, and they will cause inflation, higher interest rates, and big problems for the economy. And I think that realization, probably about three to 4 years into the Starmer government, that's when it hits. When that hits, things start to slide fast, and then shortly after the end of this decade, I think that's when the state authority really starts to break down. And at that point, I think that is when there is hope. That is when we face up to the situation as it really is, not as we would like it to be, not as civic nationalists would like to tell us it is, that really the system is okay. Everything's okay, it's just that the individuals in it are badly motivated, so vote for me, send money quick. Don't fall for that. Look at reality as it is. I think that will save you a lot of time and possibly a lot of heartache and frustration. And it means you conserve your energies for when it matters. And the analogy I draw here is the analogy with the French resistance, which had a lot of very brave people, did a lot of very brave things, accomplished very, very little, except at the time of the liberation. Then the French resistance was able to go into action a little bit, primarily by providing a group of people, a cadre, that could take authority quickly and that people could mass around in finally driving the Germans out of Paris. Had the French resistance looked at it more realistically, they probably would have had fewer people tortured and mutilated to death before 1944. And that's the reason, that's why I'm saying this. You're much better off realizing the reality. The problems come from us, ultimately, not from our leaders. They are from our willingness to tolerate what our leaders are doing. And I think that willingness, that compliance is going to continue. I'd like to talk next time about where there is ground for optimism. I think two things. I think slight hairline cracks in the economy, I think, are starting to appear, or rather inferences of the existence of those hairline cracks are starting to come into view. And secondly, people are starting to talk about the French economy, because that's the epicenter of economic problems within Europe. And so I think there's hope for collapse and breakdown. So that's nice, isn't it? But the reason it's nice is because at that point we will start to face things realistically and face up to the problems that we've made for ourselves, or that we've allowed to be made for us. But until then, I think we are going to continue to be really quite or very socially docile. And I think this is illustrated best in the jury decisions that are getting made and in the voting outcomes that happen at by-elections and local and general elections. And in the meantime, if you want to show some sympathy to Sam Melia and his wife Laura, then I think that would be a good thing to do. Thank you.